If you're watching this, you've made it all the way to the end of Make It Real, which is an absolutely amazing effort, but there's so much more to learn in the world of making web apps. And with this series, what I hope to do was give you a quick overview of how you can actually, of one of many ways that you can actually make a working web application. So in this video, I'm just going to talk through some of the things that we missed out. So we didn't do authentication, and this is a really big part of any web application. So if you think about a website like Facebook, you need to have a way to log into your account, so username and password or something, and then only retrieve the things that you actually have permission to retrieve. In order to do authentication, I really recommend you have a look at Passport.js. So this is a library that has been created that allows you to do authentication simply, or relatively simply, in a range of different with a range of different methods. So you can, as you can see here, log in with Facebook, log in with Google. You can do all of those login providers, or you can just do a simple username and password. So this is a great library to use if you're using if you're doing a Node.js project, which we just did. We also never touched on version control. So basically, version control is how huge teams of developers work together on the same project. It's about controlling which version is the real version and merging people's changes and maintaining different branches of a project so that different teams can work on the same thing at the same time. Yeah, so it's all about enabling big teams to work together. And for you as an individual, it's also a way for you to just keep track of your work. So this is Gitkraken. And Gitkraken is a graphical user interface for the underlying technology that is called Git. And Git is by far and away the most common version control system out there. So this is a project that I'm working on. We can see I've got a few different branches here. I've got a develop branch, master, and staging. So each one of these branches represents like a different version of my application. So develop is the branch that I do all my development work on. Master is the actual live one. Staging is the one that's on the staging site. And you can have any number of different branches. And we can see here, this is like the history of my project. So each one of these things is called a commit. This is when I did a chunk of work and I said, yep, I'm done with that chunk of work. I'm going to commit it. And the benefit of this is I can look through and see all the changes at any given point. I can reset to an older version if I need to for some reason, if I stuff something up. And yeah, that's version control. It's also worth noting that there are other stacks. So what we've done in this tutorial series is we've made a website with MERN. That stands for MongoDB, Express, React, and Node. So it's like an acronym for all of the technologies that we use to make our web app, and it's called MERN. And there's all sorts of different stacks out there, and this is by no means the only one. This is just a modern one that is quite popular right now, but trends change. So just be aware that there's so many different stacks out there, and this is not the only way that you can make a web app. Another thing that we didn't do is we didn't integrate any sort of CMS. So what's a CMS? A CMS stands for Content Management System. It's basically a graphical user interface that helps us to manage the content that's on our website, and it requires that it's like set up by a developer. So if you've used WordPress or Squarespace or anything like that, those are actually content management systems. They allow you to easily type in the content that you want on your website. If you're more interested in that, I recommend you have a look at Strapi. Strapi is a great new kind of CMS that is used in Node.js, but you can also use the old school WordPress or whatever else you want to use. Lots of options out there. And if you're making a website for a client, then this is pretty much a must because you want them to have some way of easily managing the content on their page. And lastly, responsiveness. We didn't really talk about this at all. So responsive web design is the idea that your page should be able to respond to changing screen sizes. So when you go to Facebook, it looks wildly different on a mobile device than it does on a desktop. And there's some coding that goes into that. Flexboxes are a great way of dealing with responsiveness, but there's also this thing called CSS media queries, and you can use those in conjunction. I recommend you look into those two things. So flexboxes, which we did a bit of, and media queries, which we didn't do any of. But if you look into those things, that will enable you to make sure that your website will look good on desktops and on mobile devices. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. Now go out there and make it real.